Scott, how you doing, man?
Doing great, Greg. Thanks for having me on, brother.
I was excited for this. Like, you guys reached out to me, and I was like, I know that guy, but I don't know that guy, if you know what I'm saying.
So here's the time for us to finally get to shake hands virtually, at least. Shit.
Exactly, exactly. Well, you're down in Colombia, right?
Yeah, I'm Colombia, South America, man. And in January, actually, it'll be my fifth year, which is
Wow.
like bonkers to think about because it was only supposed to be for a few months.
That's awesome. So obviously, you did not grow up in Colombia. You grew up in the US. So let's hear your backstory on how did you get into entrepreneurship?
Entrepreneurship, man, I think happens like most people. I saw a great opportunity, but it was because of a big problem. And so what I learned is I was a sales guy, dude. Like at 20 years old, I started doing high ticket sales at a
Yeah.
timeshare resort. And then I like got recruited out of that, which is like vicious sales too, like it's scumbag sales. You know what timeshares are?
You're kind of like renting a property for a couple weeks, or I don't even know. What is that?
It's buying air, it's selling air. It's nothing. It doesn't exist. But effectively what it taught me was is how do you sell an intangible product for tens of thousands of dollars to people who don't want to talk to you, who are only there for a free incentive, that have zero trust for you.
Yeah.
And those like foundational sales skills that I learned in those 2 short years from 20 to 22 years old were stronger than every other product I ever touched. And so I always say like the process is stronger than the product.
Yeah.
And those foundational skills led me into this other career where I stayed with the guy and ultimately I was a sales rep and became the COO. But I worked for one guy, Greg, for like 10 years in his industry. And I just think, dude, if you're an aspiring person, you spend 5 to 7 years in anything, making pizzas, taking out the trash, sweeping the floors, you'll see the gaps in every little industry there. And it's an opportunity to master something. And that's kind of what spurred me on is like studying under other people and having what I call a tremendous sales experience.
Yeah, and it's interesting you were describing the timeshare because I don't know shit about
Yeah.
timeshare, but I do know that the things you mentioned on, what it is, it's very similar to the wholesaling industry because you're dealing with hostile sellers sometimes.
Yep.
They just want an offer. They don't know who you are and what you're doing, and you pretty much have 1 or 3 shots off the bat to make a good
Yep.
impression, or else you're just gonna be chasing them for a while. So it seems like, that transition from your time because you didn't you have a timeshare, but you kinda scaled that up your
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
life.
so I did timeshare
Yeah.
and then I worked in the travel clubs, which is like selling is like timeshare adjacent. It was like timeshare with lipstick on it. And I
Yeah.
worked for that guy for 10 years, but it was
Yeah.
a better version, right?
Yeah.
And then ultimately, this is what I saw. I saw all these people coming into our travel clubs, Greg, and they were like, yeah, I'd buy your travel club, but I got this stupid timeshare I hate. And so then became, okay, how do I create a vehicle to help these people cancel this albatross around their neck and
Yeah.
then go into ours? And that's when I started this monster timeshare exit company. I was partnering with lawyers out of California and
Yeah.
Florida. And essentially, what we did, which was even more similar to the wholesaling space, is we were contacting customers of this product and saying, typically speaking, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, consumers like you were victims of deceptive sales practices. Let's dig into some of your pain points here. Let's see if we can't find you a resolution. How are your finances, et cetera? And we were qualifying these people and selling these leads to attorneys. And that got into a like multiple, really sizable 8 figure a year revenue business. Matter of fact, January 14th, 2019, I had a signed letter of intent to sell my company, 50% of my company for $54 million. I had been through diligence. I had been through tax. I had already been plane shopping, brother. Um, it didn't go down,
Yeah.
but that's okay. Life is a blessing. We ended up getting in litigation from one of our competitors. But I got into the REI space because my buddy was like, hey, bro, like, I know you're kind of like a pirate without a destination right now. Do you know what I do? And I was like, no. And he was just like, dude, if you just took your concept that you were doing there and overlay it to wholesaling, dude, I think you'd murder it.
Yeah.
And I did my own diligence in the industry, Greg. And I was like, oh, I want some of this. That's how we got here.
So that's how you got into the real estate industry is you were in this timeshare industry for a long time, obviously. And so just to make sure I understand it. So you started with the timeshares, but then eventually you guys scaled out this timeshare exit business.
Exit business. So then we were getting people out of it. So I spent 2 years
Yeah.
getting people into it.
Yeah.
And then 7 years later, I came back
Got it.
and I spent 7 years getting people out of them
I
because
got
I
it.
knew all the insides. That's what I was
Yeah.
saying about the restaurant things. If
Yeah.
you know how the sausage is made, you know exactly what they're doing wrong and how this is
Yeah.
wrong. Because, dude, I've been to them. I would go in timeshare shop and they would literally print on the back page the contracts, but only show you the first page of every contract. So they would have you sign, 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 but on the hidden was the back.
Yeah.
Or they would say, hey, listen, now to save the environment, what we're going to do is we're not going to give you a paper copy. We put it on a USB drive and
Oh my
and you
God.
only have 7 days to resend. But they would hide this USB drive unfindable in this big leather packet, or they wouldn't even include it. Oops, our bad. And so, like, you learn all these concepts, but it's just a matter of sticking to one thing and mastering it. And so, one thing I'd like to say I'm really good at is the marketing aspects of all these campaigns. What is the seller's mindset? What is the owner's mindset? Whatever product it may be, and understanding how they communicate online, their
Yeah.
feelings and emotions, what their search queries typically are, because I'm really big on the digital media side, even though this is outbound. But then taking that and then overlaying it to this campaign here behind me. And so I think that's why we've gone, quote unquote, so far, so fast, is just because I had all this depth of experience from sales and marketing. And that's something that a lot of guys in this field, respectfully, don't necessarily have a lot of.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that, like, you had all this experience that you're able to compound over 2 decades and then plug it into this vehicle of real estate where you see a huge opportunity, obviously.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of new investors, because we got about half new investors, half experienced people listening to this. The reason a lot of new investors don't make money right away is because 'cause they've never ran a fucking business, or they've never been in sales. So they think they're gonna make 200 grand a year 1, when they have no experience running a business or even being in sales. But you were able to have the 2 decades of experience and just you switch the widget essentially.
Yeah, and I think you hit it right on the head about the sales, because you don't really have a business until you have sales. And
100%.
so if you don't have the art of communication, and it's not very hard, I think it's almost like you can teach yourself. Everything that I learned from sales came from some mentors, but it was really observation of successful salespeople. And I was lucky enough, Greg. How old are you, Greg, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 29.
I look at what I'm about to say as a strategic advantage. I didn't have YouTube when I was trying to master my sales careers. I only had books. And
Yeah,
so I couldn't get distracted from my Facebook going off or my Instagram going off. And I couldn't get distracted by the next algorithmic feed telling me what it is it wants me to go. So I had
yeah.
to go to books, and I consumed everything Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins. I mean, there's not a sales book that I didn't ingest. And I took it as my profession because I didn't have a college degree and I wasn't going to be broke. And I found out that I could use these lips and literally print money. And so for me, like, that was my advantage. And so for all the new sales guys out there, information exists. It's the persistence. It's the persistence to stick through to the end of the book. It's the persistence to stick through the 14 no's that it takes to get to one yes. So if it takes 15 leads to equal a deal, you know how many no's it takes for these guys to equal a lead? So it's like you're going to have to get comfortable with no's and that sales persistence and mindset. So yeah, I think that's a big opportunity zone. I wouldn't even say a deficit. It's an opportunity zone for most wholesalers, which is I'm going to be a salesman first, a business guy second, and then I can become a real CEO.
100%. You're bringing me up, like, I've been doing this business for about 10 years now, and I started when I was really young, kinda like you, and I remember that the gap I had in the beginning, like the first 3 years, it was like I was just kinda stumbling through it, and the day I decided, and the key there is decided to get good at sales and actually study it and take it seriously, that's when I started actually making progress. Because I actually got kicked out of somebody's house. I used to live in New York, in the New York City area, and I got kicked out of someone's house on an appointment, and I was so embarrassed because I had no idea what I was doing,
Yeah.
and that day, I remember sitting in my car that I could barely pay for, and I was like, I'm going to get good at sales because if I can fix that problem, I won't have an income issue anymore. And then obviously, fast forward, that's what helped me actually grow my business because a lot of people don't realize that you could be flipping houses and, we have rentals and this, that. If you're not good at getting deals and sales, which we'll talk about on this podcast, what good is the rental? What good is the hard money guy? It's
Yeah.
useless because you have no opportunities in front of you.
You just have to become sales efficient, sales sufficient, because this you should ultimately outsource. Like if you're a CEO, you're going to have closers, or
Yes,
you're going to have leads managers, or you're going to have qualifiers. But if success from being a leader comes from accountability, and you can't hold somebody accountable on something that you don't know how to do the core functions of. I'm not
exactly.
saying you got to be better than them. No, you want to surround yourself with better people. But if you don't know how to do the process, you'll never hold somebody accountable for the process, which means you'll never be successful as a leader, period.
Exactly. You can't manage someone if you don't know how their job works, right? My acquisitions guy is better at buying houses than me, for sure.
Hmm.
But we're buying 3 condos right now. He's keeping 1, I'm keeping 2. He
I
bought
love it.
these at 58 cents on the dollar.
Mm,
He spent 2 hours with the guy and, like, I'm not that patient. You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, I'm, like, more of a go, go, go kinda guy. But the thing is, like, before I brought him on, like, I knew the process, but now he spends his whole day dealing with sellers, and it allows me to do other things. So, anyway,
Exactly.
you transition to real estate. So, I want to talk about you getting into real estate and what that looked like. And then I really want to spend time, like, how you built this behemoth behind you and at least some cold call stuff, because you guys have an absolute juggernaut down there in Columbia.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Means a lot. I think it is important to talk about why I went into it and what I did to qualify myself to go into this place. Whether it was 5 or 7, I forget because it's been so long now. I tell the story over and over, but I literally was like, okay, cool. Let me see what the competition's like. And I went to like sell my house fast Orlando or sell my house fast Pensacola or whatever cities that are out there. And I filled out 5 to 7 forms on these websites. And I
Yeah.
sat there with bated breath for my cell phone to ring. And I'm just like, it's 12:30, it's 12:35, it's 12:40. Bro, on the first day, only 2 people called me back.
Oh my
And
God.
then on the second day, like it took multiple days for everybody on my list to actually even pick up the phone and call me. And that was after seeing so many disgusting websites and poor landing pages. And this
Yeah.
isn't optimized. And this keyword doesn't make sense. Why am I saying sell my house fast Orlando? And I go to it and it's like Detroit's #1 home buyer.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
big shot. Like, let's do something special here. Let's do some dynamic word insertion there based on the geo targeting. But I saw that, and then the pitches that I heard, Greg, I couldn't believe it. These weren't pitches. These were barely even conversations. They were just the most unstructured sales processes I had ever been in. And then that's when I was like, oh, this is a fractured economy. These are a bunch of like little bands of not even cowboys, but hobbyists that are able to pay their bills who aren't really trying to reach for the superstars, the bulk of them, just to be honest. And it gave me so much comfortability in the old saying is like, you can count on the mediocrity or your competition. And I said, oh, this is good because I feel like we can come in here and like push some people around and make it a little fun. And
Yeah.
that's what was the decision to make. And I didn't have really much product knowledge. My business partner in Orlando, who's the one who was like, dude, you should come into this. I said, dude, let me just handle my core competency, which is operations and marketing, and you underwrite and shit. Like you
Yeah.
acquire, you guys wholesale. I'll help on the dispo, the technology, but this is your side. So then that's how my initial steps into this industry were.
You know what's funny about that? Because your partner is Alex, right?
Yes, exactly right. Alex
So
Casado. Shout out to you, Alex.
I was like 3 seconds away from buying a wholesale deal from you guys, but you guys couldn't get the reduction that we needed. Like,
Uh huh.
basically, we signed the assignment, but then it was contingent upon them getting a reduction, and it was right in my backyard. And I
No
remember I
shit.
was like, "Oh, these guys are like good wholesalers." I really liked your guy. He was awesome to deal with.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a good
Yeah.
dispo team. I actually down here, I have dispo, TC, buyer's agent, property management. I think that's it for down here.
Yeah.
So we're supporting the real estate down here too.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. This was like a couple of years ago. It was a condo. I
Nice.
I went out like he called me actually, like out of the
Yeah.
blue because he saw that I bought like 4 other properties in the same zip code. I ran out to the condo and I happened to be in New York because I live on the West Coast. Looked at it and I'm like, all right. And then he was like, okay, I'll do that if we can get a reduction. The seller didn't
Yep.
take a reduction, but no harm, no foul.
Oh well.
But I really liked their process because it was all virtual. Like you guys obviously
Yep.
work in New York and like they had everything buttoned up, man.
Super virtual from down here. We're on a different continent.
Literally. So is it the summer down there right now?
I am below the equator, but I'm below the equator and up the mountains, which
Okay.
means this place I'm at, it's called Pareda, Colombia. It's very similar to Medellin, except for families. Like Medellin's for a bunch of single guys. I have a wife and 2 kids. So I'm not there. I'm in this other little city that's kind of
Yeah.
smaller. But the point is, it's forever spring here. It never gets hotter than like maybe 81, 365 days a year. And it never gets cooler than like maybe 68, 70. All year, it's just perfect here. Like it's so hard because now I'm one of those old people who go to the States. Ah, it's too hot. Ah, it's too cold. And it's
Yeah,
like, take
yeah.
me back to where I know what the temperature is going to be.
Yeah, especially you used to live in Florida in summer.
Like, goddamn, I haven't felt humidity until I go back there.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's unbearable in the summer. So you end up starting to wholesale, you scale the business up. And now, if people are watching the YouTube video, they're going to see his background. Obviously, he's in a large office with a huge staff behind him. If you're listening to this, go on YouTube and watch the video version. So let's talk about how did this all begin with Lamassu? Because you guys have built an absolute beast.
Yeah, it was an accident, but it was expected. And so I knew we were going to do something big as soon as I saw what I saw just for myself. And then what ended up happening is me and Alex were just like murdering it. And we would go to some, mastermind and they'd be like, hey, how are you guys doing? We'd talk. And then somebody came up to me afterwards. His name was Daniel Hurst. He's my client now today. He was just like, dude, can I get some callers? I was like, no, Like, this is just for me and my boys. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it was just like, come on, man, you can't break. Come on, help me out. And I was like, all right, I guess. And then somebody else came, and then somebody else came, and then the buzz started getting out. And
Yeah.
no joke, 4.5 years later, but I didn't start offering services till like month 8. So
Okay.
roughly a little over 3 years later, dude, I haven't spent a single dollar in marketing ever in my company's history for clients. Not a fucking
Amazing.
peso, not a dollar, not a penny, not anything. Everything's been word of mouth. And so that's kind of how it built. Like, I helped a guy, and then that guy told somebody else, and then that guy told somebody else. The point is I truly believe, and this is a quote I think of maybe Buffett, I don't know, but it's something along the lines of all great companies solve great problems.
100%.
And the problem is cold calling leads suck. The cold calling leads are underqualified.
Yeah.
Cold calling leads don't perform as good as PPC. And so what I built here is leads that I would feed my own closers. Like, I'm not going to take my closers off of my PPC channel or TV or something else to give them
Yeah.
some dog shit wood. Like, I need them optimized. So I
Yeah.
created in my system what I call PPC quality leads from outbound because of the qualifying and filtration system that we do.
That's awesome. So let's get into that because that is a complaint that everyone always says. They're like, oh, well, I could cold call for a fraction of the price, but then I got to talk to 200 leads to get a deal. I'm like, dude, if you got to talk to 200 leads to get a deal, you're doing something wrong. So what are you guys doing? Like, what is the process like with it? With the it's Lamassu, right? That's the name.
Yeah, Lamassu. Yep, Lamassu.
Lamassu calling, and especially to Colombia, the English is much better too down there.
It's a lot of things to address. I'll hit at the last and then work back. The English is much better, but it's also the culture is much better, and we're on the exact same time zone. We're on Central Standard Time. But when me and Alex first partnered together, like, I hired a company in Philippines, and dude, I heard a chicken one day in the fucking background when I was talking, listening to calls. I
Yeah,
was like, I can't let this be my company's first impression. I'm not going to go into business and have this as my first impression of any
yeah,
of my sellers. Killed that. Then I hired a company, quote unquote, out of Costa Rica. And then, like, they suck too. I started researching, and I had some
yeah,
connections to Colombia already. I was like, dude, I'll just come down here. So that was the reason why that business decision. And again, it was just going to be for 6 months. Like, dude, I'll go down
yeah.
there. I'll set up our campaign. I'll be back. Don't worry. But what we do differently, though, is change that mindset of a heartbeat and a home. All of my competitors are like, hey, here's what we call a lead, a heartbeat and a home. They have a heartbeat, they have a home, send it over. And
Yeah.
that's how you get this 200 to 1 or
Yeah,
80 to
yeah, yeah.
1 or 50 to 1 ratio. So my average intake call out of every lead we generate here, which are hundreds a day, the average intake call is 14 to 17 minutes long
Off of a cold call?
for a lead, for an actual
Yeah.
real lead
I wanna
that we
sell my
consider our
house,
lumps.
14 minutes long.
Yes, exactly. From stranger to building rapport to overcoming objections to really just building value in the call. The average intake call here is 14 to 17 minutes long, which means they need a lot of training. And then our script is
Yeah.
pretty robust. But I tell people, here's the other thing that blew my mind, Greg, about your industry when I first came into it. They were like, okay, we'll sell you VAs. I'm like, okay, that's cool. So you want $6 an hour? Yeah. But we're also going to have to sell you a leads manager. Like, why do I need a leads manager? What they're going to do is they're going to generate a lead, and they're going to call the lead back and make sure it's actually good enough. And then we'll send it to you. I'm like, so wait a minute. It's going to talk to 2 or 3 people before it gets to me. Can I just hire all leads managers? Like, why do I need to hire the babies? Can I just hire the babysitters? They're like, no, that's not how it works. And I was like, dude, I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna set up closer quality qualifiers, like guys who could literally close the whole transaction and just put them on the front side of the operation. So that's really been our entire focus. Hyper qualified humans making hyper qualified leads.
Absolutely. That makes so much sense. Heartbeat in a home. There's like 3 pieces of information like address, name, living in the property, and then you get your closers to call them.
Literally, I can't imagine how many people who have cold callers who listen to this are going to resonate with them about to say, where the lead says they'd sell for the right price. Get the fuck out of here. No shit, they'd sell for the right price. That's a lead. Like, let's spend some time with these people. Everybody would sell for the right price if the offer made sense. Get out of here, bro. We don't have time to waste. Do they want to sell? Do they have a story? What is the motivation behind the reason why they want to sell? How's it going to make them feel? What will it mean to them? How will it feel the day they drive by that house next year and see a nice young family out there spending Christmas there, playing in the yard? How are they going to now be able to go take that cruise that they always wanted to do, or their husband get that treatment that they always wanted? Like, there's so much story behind the reason, but
Oh,
most of these people sound like idiots on the phone, and the
oh yeah.
customers treat them like idiots.
It's crazy. Like sales 101. It's like, okay, like before you got call, marketing, mail, whatever. How long have you been thinking about selling before you got this call? Yeah, and I'll cover a lot of ground. Oh, well, I've been thinking about selling for 6 months. It's like the thing in sales, the more open-ended questions you can ask, and then the more you can summarize their feelings and put a label on it, the more they're gonna talk, the more they're gonna like you. You don't have to have some ninja tricks. It's like you're just building authentic communication with people, and that's how you get these deals done. But the skilled people, like you guys have the skilled people in the office, they know how to do that versus the people who are in the Philippines with the chickens are just checking them off a list, bro. Crazy.
And they sound like it. And one of
Yeah.
the things I train them, I say quality questions lead to quality
Yes.
conversations. Quality conversations leads to quality leads.
Yep.
And then quality leads lead to quality deals. But it
100%.
all starts with the questions. And people are afraid to ask questions. And if they do, they stop at first level questions. By the way, here's a bar for everybody out there. We use the word story. Can you tell me the story about the condition of the kitchen? That right there will completely change the answers that you get. But more importantly, this industry stops at the answer. They don't ask those second and third level questions. And they're just getting like, oh, well, the story in the kitchen is, we had it. My wife wanted to do this. And what do you think's prevented you from all those years? Well, it's because this, and this. How do you think that's making her feel or whatever? But
Yeah.
most people in this industry, if they even ask a question, they ask high level questions. I've heard so many closer pitches in this industry that are bed, bath, square footage. Here's my offer. Like, bro, spend a little bit of time, create a friend, ask some quality questions, and you'll find some pain points.
And people don't realize that if you are really good at talking to people, like on the other side of the phone is $75,000. So if you knew your at bat was $75,000, but you have to put on a good performance as a buyer, you'd probably speak differently, but people just don't get that. They're like, oh, how long you been selling for? And what's your offer? Where are you going to go? Okay. Well, I talked to my underwriting partner. I think they could offer you like $30,000. What the fuck? You don't
Well,
have any permission to make a low offer because you have never even had a conversation about if their offer even makes sense for them.
I love
You
what you
see this
just
all the
said.
time. It's fucking crazy, dude.
Yes. People need to play that back and listen to it slowly because that mindset is exactly what helps you get through the nose. I think another shortcut that people take in this industry really aggressively, and it's a lot of sales, what I'm about to generalize here, is they don't look at their nose the right way. So if it's $75,000 and I take 1 out of 20, okay, so each one of these calls is worth almost 2,000 bucks. But you can't get paid your 2,000 bucks unless you put on a full performance. What ends up happening is they prejudge in the first sentence, in the first few minutes, and they don't put the exact same work in every single time. Go as far as you can every single time. Treat every lead the same. Once you figure it out, it's literally mathematics. You can be a showman, you can be the world's best salesman, but once you have consistency, it's just mathematics. Then you know, like, hey, I'm getting paid $2,000 to talk to 19 no's, and I'm going to talk to all 19 of these no's with the same conviction as I do the $80,000 one, because I'm not actually making 80 in that call. I'm making 2,000 or 4,000 in all the rest of these calls.
Exactly. It's funny you say that. We had our team huddle this morning and we were going through the pipeline and my guy deleted like this missed call. And I'm like, yo, put that back in the fucking CRM. What are you doing? And he's like, I don't know if it's a lead. I'm like, it's a $300 phone call. Like, what if they
But
answer in 5 days and it's a fucking 80K deal? Like, come on, man.
no person would ever do that if they were actually paying the marketing budget. Because like we're like, yo, bro, that's 300 bucks. To them, it's just an opportunity. It's not even
Yeah.
a good opportunity because they didn't even fill out the form. And so, but
Yeah.
it's just getting them on that mindset. Because if we are a collective team, then we all have to care about the collective overheads, et cetera. So yeah, but good point.
Totally. So you got the callers. They're spending a lot of time standing out amongst the sea of other people calling them, right? Because that's a
Yep.
big, so you guys can really stand out with the way your process is.
Yep.
So at that point, like you push the lead forward to, the client. And now at that point, I feel like the client most likely just gets their closer or the owner if the owner's buying houses. And at that point, you make the process more efficient for the customers.
Yeah, it's strange because what I'm about to say, Greg, is going to fly in the face of kind of everything I've said if you only listen and you don't understand. And that is I actually don't make the closer's job any easier. My goal isn't to save them 1 second off of their normal pitch. All my goal is to put them in front of more closable leads.
Yeah.
And that's it. I am increasing efficiency
Yeah.
of the lead to deal ratio,
Yes.
but I'm actually not saving any time because their pitch is designed to build their own rapport, to create their own value, to create their own urgency, to extract a price, to get a reduction, to get a contract. Like those are their processes. And sometimes I'll have people hire me. They're like, oh, dude, this is great. You'll just send me a lead and I'll send out contracts. I'm like, pump the brakes, buddy.
Yeah.
You're still going to have to work. You're
Yeah.
just going to work through less bullshit to get a deal every single time.
Exactly. Well, people got to think like if it's a 14-minute phone call on average, like how much data you have as a buyer or as a, like a lot of owners do the, the sales themselves or whatever. It's like
Yep.
you got, a whole book full of information versus a one sheet.
And we pass it all to them in the CRM. Like all the things that we collect, we pass it all. We collect more. There's not a single affiliate I've ever had in 4 years who has every field that we capture, which just means we have a really robust capture form. We pass it all to them in the notes section, the stuff that they don't have a place for me to map to. But to me, it's just part of that quality process and they get it. And I don't even really want them to read the leads because this is sales. Like time is everything. Money loves speed. So they should literally just get the lead, bang on it, and then see it as they're on the phone with them. But I do provide them a plethora of details to get them in the right mindset as hidden information to go into their calls.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. So you got this big calling operation and lead generation beast down in Colombia now. I'm looking at your office. There's probably like we saw 150 people in there. Like
Yep.
as a leader, what have you learned from growing this big organization, especially in a different country? Because, I have 4 people that work with me and you got 180 plus. Like, what do you do as a leader to show up for them? Because I mean, I could tell you run a really good shop.
Thank
Yeah.
you. There's a white guy standing behind me. He just came in from Miami. Anyways, dude, he walked in here, said, dude, I feel like it's AmeriQuest all over again. He said, I haven't seen a place this jumping until back when we were crashing the economy. It makes me feel good to hear that because that's what I want. I want to give these guys a workplace. And what I tell people at a high level, and then I'll answer the leadership, is cold calling sucks. It's literally the worst entire part of the entire REI sales process, period. End of story. Outbound cold calling. But if I had to cold call on Jeff Bezos's yacht, my life would be better. I can't give him a yacht, but I can give him a damn good work environment. I mean, we got ping
Mhm.
pongs, arcade, we got beanbags everywhere, and we got such a dope environment that this feels fun every single day. So, as a leader, it's my job to protect them. I'm in a third world country, bro. And this is the safest, nicest place that many of these kids have ever seen in their entire life. And this is a good place to come in and pour in and then pour into me and I pour into them. So being a leader is leading by example, but also giving them a place where they can feel like a man or a woman and just fucking feel good about themselves and not have a trashy environment. Like this is a real deal place.
When did you start the office? Like 2019, 2020 ish?
Yeah, 2020.
So, I mean, you changed a lot of these people's lives, I'm sure, because they obviously had to recruit, you had to get people, you had to get bodies in the seats and
Yep.
train the people, and it's like you're running a personal development shop that happens to have cold calling. You know what I'm saying? I could just
I
tell.
I I
Yeah,
haven't heard it put exactly like that,
yeah.
but you're 100% correct. I hire good humans. I make them great salespeople and great, like entrepreneurs, etc. But dude, when you talk about changing lives, without going too deep into it, I've never, Greg, not had my why include my last name. It was my parents, it's my daughters, my spouse. Every why, my motivator to get out of
Yeah.
bed has always been my last name. Once kids started coming up to me and they're like my Juan Bonilla, he's one of these kids off to the side. He's got the blue shirt. He's my top team leader. He's like a rock star. But I remember him coming up to me about a year and a half ago saying, hey, man, because of this job, dude, I could afford to buy my wife an engagement ring. And by the way, we're getting married. And that's because of you. And these other guys, I bought my first house. I bought my first car. I bought my first moto. I'm having a kid. Like that shit becomes invigorating for me because I see the impact that we're making and I see the appreciation for the impact, which also helps you as a leader to keep on pushing on when people are
Yeah.
appreciative of you sacrificing. But I outwork every motherfucker here. There's not a kid here that can't even stand close to me. So I'm really setting the bar high for these kids to let them see by example when they get their own company one day. I want to be like Scott, how he ran that shit.
Dude, I love that, man. That's like the best advice you could ever hear. And even that, like being a leader, I had to have a tough conversation a couple months ago. There was some performance issues and I had to do a solid and have a wake up call. And as a leader, you got to do that shit. You can't just let people slide, you know?
You can't let people slide. And I'll tell you a story I haven't told anybody on any podcast. A couple of months ago, I came in and I terminated 41 people in one day.
Wow. Holy shit.
My numbers were better the next day. And now we're actually performing significantly better from that. There was a lot of fear in the air and I had to really stand by and there was rumor mill going. And so just dealing with that impact that it was had. And then I had to leave out of town the next day. So people were really freaking out.
Yeah.
But what it showed them is that like, hey, I am truly serious about this accountability thing. And the 41 people that got terminated, they weren't the top 41, they were the bottom 41.
100%. Yeah.
And it wasn't even all the bottom 41. It was the bottom 41 who had shown us that their numbers weren't where we needed them to be, but also their desire to grow wasn't where it needed to
That's the
be.
key.
Because if you're willing to follow my lead, I'll take you to the promised land, bro. This is not
Yeah.
rocket science. This is sales. Follow the script, use this voice tonality, work with me, accept feedback. I'll take you to commission pool every month. Right now, 76% of our entire team here is in the commission pool. And like, that's a good feeling. Like, I want these guys to rob the bank every month. Like, I send a quality lead, I get paid. I send a quality lead, I get
Exactly.
paid.
I mean, that's what you got to do as a leader. That's awesome, man. Well,
Yeah,
listen,
thank you, brother.
we could talk for 4 hours, man. And I'm sure we'll meet in person one day.
Sure
And
we
by the
will,
way, I got to
bro.
give you a quick shout out. Your Leads to Deals podcast. Like,
Yes, the leads to deals. Yeah,
that podcast is fucking fire, man. I've heard a few
dude.
episodes and you got great guests on there. You ask great questions. I like how you make it really sales heavy, right? Because a
Yes.
lot of real estate podcasts are just like, hey, how are you wholesaling houses in Kentucky? It's like, dude, everyone knows how to fucking do that, right?
Yes.
So you got a great
Mhm.
podcast you put out. I really like the stuff you put on social. If people wanted to check out Lamassu Leads, what is the best website for them to do that? And then the best way to follow you, Scott?
Yeah, lamassuleads.com, and that's Lamassu, Lamassu, lamassuleads.com. But you have two options on IG, and I would encourage you to take both. Number one, I'm big on authenticity. Me and Greg were having this conversation before the cameras went live about authentic people and just like how big of a deal it is for both of us. And I want people to follow the corporate website, corporate Instagram at Lamassu Leads, because I want them to see this real deal shop behind us. And I'm naked about everything, like the goods, the bads, the highs, the lows, etc. But then at Scott Morse, SCOTTMORSE, is me as the CEO, me as the father, me as the just guy getting out there doing it. And so that's for more of the personal behind the scenes. But I do have those two different IGs. And between those two, you'll know as much as my mama does.
Scott, man, this was a pleasure. And I'm excited to put this out into the world.
All right, cool, brother. I appreciate it.